Hello everyone, this is Pooja Sharma and welcome back to Vysh's YouTube channel. So I'm back with the Geography Class 11th NCERT series. This is the part 2 of our final chapter, which is chapter 7. And before we begin, these are the details on the screen of Vysh IAS. So if in case you want to enroll for our UPSC test series, you can contact on this number on WhatsApp. You can even email us and you can visit our YouTube channel for many more videos of different subjects which will help you for your UPSC preparation and preparation for other government exams as well. So let's begin. So as I had said earlier that after every 2 chapters I'll try showing you the previous year questions which came from that particular chapters. So as you can see in this question, which is from 2020, this is from the climate chapter about jet streams, and here cyclones, this is a combination of the chapter of climate and the natural disasters which we are going to read about it right now. And then in this you can see this is a crop related question, so the answer is cotton. So like this they can ask you about any kharif crops or rabi crops. And here this is from the not vegetation, it is from soil because the type of crops which are grown in that particular soil also. And this is from the forest cover. So we read about the forest cover of India in our last video. And then this is about the presence of national parks which lie completely in the temperate alpine zone. So the answer for this is obviously Valley of Flowers, because in we had read it in the earlier videos that this lies in the Himalaya region. So this one also, which of it inhibits water loss in desert areas? So this is also vegetation question. And the answer for this is D, all three. And this 2018 question, it was again repeated, and earlier it came in 2013. In this we again have with reference to agricultural soils. So this is from the soil chapter. So in this only 3 is correct. The answer is B, because this is also wrong and this is also wrong. So in this one you can see consider the following states and where tropical wet evergreen forest is present. So this is again from vegetation, natural vegetation. Then in India, in which of the following types of forest is teak a dominant species? So again, this is also from natural vegetation, and this is again from natural vegetation. So you can see how many questions have been asked from the natural vegetation chapter, as well as the soil chapters also, because see, this question is on laterite soils. Then in this again we have about soils, the soil conservation part, contour bunding, where it takes place. So in this the answer all 3 are wrong. So the answer is none of the above, because this contour bonding, it happens in hilly areas. And this is again a crop related question which is indirectly related to soil. And as I said earlier, the 2018 question which was repeated was already asked in 2013. So this is just to show you the type of questions which can be formed from these chapters which we are reading about, and how certain questions can get repeated. So our next disaster is the tropical cyclone. So these tropical cyclones, they are intense low pressure areas which are confined to areas which is lying between the 30 degrees north and the 30 degrees south latitudes in the atmosphere, and around them high velocity winds will blow. So horizontally it will extend up to 500 to 1000 kilometers, and vertically from the surface it will go up to 12 to 14 kilometers. This tropical cyclone or a hurricane, it is like a heat engine which will be energized mainly because of the release of this latent heat and on account of the condensation of the moisture which the wind carries when they blow over a water body like oceans and seas. So as I said in the earlier videos, that when wind moves over a water body, it will carry these water droplets along with it, and after moving to a certain distance, the clouds will become heavy. So they start pouring the rain droplets, and this condensation of moisture or the water droplets will go and mix up with the warm air which is situated in the lower region. So that is how this colliding of two different temperatures will cause this disturbance. So yet there have been difference in opinions among the scientists about the exact mechanism of a tropical cyclone, but there are certain conditions which prove for the emergence of a tropical cyclone. So that is, as I said now, large and continuous supply of warm and moist air that can release enormous latent heat, and also the strong Coriolis force that can prevent filling of the low pressure at the center. So this absence of Coriolis force near the equator, it prohibits the formation of tropical cyclone between 0 degrees to 5 degrees latitude. So what happens is, near the equator or near the warm and very humid, very warm places, what happens is, between 0 degrees to 5 degrees latitudes, these tropical cyclones, they won't occur, because here the Coriolis force, it will be very weak or it will be zero. But they are very strong in the northern and southern hemisphere. So this Coriolis effect, what will happen is, the objects will deflect or move towards the right in the northern hemisphere, and the objects in the southern hemisphere, they will move off towards the left. So even ocean waves, the same happens with them also. They'll change according to this rotation because of the Earth's rotation. Then unstable condition through the troposphere, that will create local disturbances around which a cyclone will develop. And finally, absence of the strong vertical wind wedge which disturbs the vertical transport of latent heat. So what happens is, there will be this absence of the strong vertical wind wedge or a strong wind blockade. Because of this, it will disturb the vertical transport of latent heat. So this heat will try going upwards, okay. But just because this strong vertical wind wedge is not there, that the moisture droplets, they'll mix up with this latent heat. When this vertical transport is taking place upwards, these droplets will fall down and they'll mix up with this latent heat or the warm air which is in the lower regions. So the structure of a tropical cyclone, it is characterized by large pressure gradients, and the center of the cyclone is mostly a warm and low pressure zone which will be cloudless core, and this will also be known as the eye of the storm. So the isobars, they'll be closely placed to each other, showing a very high pressure gradient, and this will normally vary between 14 to 7 millibar per 100 kilometers, but sometimes it can reach up to 60 millibars per 100 kilometers. So the expansion of the wind belt, it will be about 10 to 150 kilometers from the center. So imagine this is the center, and in all the directions which it blows, it will form a belt of 10 to 150 kilometers. So you can understand how huge it will be. And the spatio-temporal distribution or the space and time distribution of the tropical cyclone in India, it is mainly because of the peninsular shape of India. So that is why the space which it takes and the time at which it occurs, it's mainly because of this peninsular shape, the inverted triangular shape, which is surrounded by Bay of Bengal in the east and Arabian Sea in the west. So the tropical cyclones in India, they will also originate in these two important locations only. So though most of the cyclones, they'll originate between 10 degrees to 15 degrees north latitudes during the monsoon season, in the case of Bay of Bengal, what will happen, they will mostly develop in the months of October and November. And here they will originate between 16 degrees to 20 degrees. I'm sorry, I forgot to edit this. This is 20 degrees N latitudes. and it will go up to the west of 92 degrees east latitudes. So by July, the place of origin of these storms, it will shift to around 18 degrees north latitudes and west of 90 degrees east near the Sundarban deltas. So the consequences of tropical cyclones. So what will happen is, due to the energy of the tropical cyclone, which comes from the latent heat which is released in the form of warm moist air, so what will happen is, this will cause the cyclone to become even more stronger. So hence, with the increase in the distance from the sea, how much away it is occurring from the sea, the force of the cyclone will decrease, because around the cyclone there will be this water body. So the distribution of the wave, it will happen off within no time. But when the cyclone occurs near the seashore or near the coastal areas, that time it becomes very worse. So here the sentence is very tricky. It says that in India, the force of cyclone decreases with increase in distance from Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. So this is just, they have just twisted the sentence and said what I just said now, that the force of the cyclone, it will decrease when it is away from the coast, that is increase in the distance from the coast of coast. So imagine this is India, right? So from the coast till Bay of Bengal, and from this side, from the coast till Arabian Sea, on the distance on which it is occurring, if it is little far away from the coast and taking place in both Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, then it will gradually calm down. But when it happens nearer, it will cause a lot of damage. So the coastal areas are often struck by severe cyclonic storms with an average velocity of 180 kilometers per hour. So this forms a storm surge, which will be abnormal rise in the sea level. So as you can see over here, how water is rising. This is mainly because you can see how much close it is to the coast. That's why. The same wave, suppose it will start in the middle of the ocean or the sea, it will soon become flattened and it will mix up with the surrounding water body. So this is how it will look when it hits the coast. So a surge is generated due to the interaction of air, sea and land. And the cyclone, it provides the driving force in the form of very high horizontal pressure gradient and very strong surface winds. So the sea water, it will flow across the coast along with strong winds and heavy downpour. And this will result in flooding of human settlements, agricultural fields, damaging crops and destruction of structures, infrastructure which is created by the human beings. So you can see from this picture how high winds are pushing the water, and when they push the water, it will form into large waves and then enter into the coast. And this is the circulation of wind, which will give power and speed to the cyclone. Next we have the floods. So the inundation of land and human settlements, it happens by the rise of water in channels or rivers and its spillovers. So this can be understood with the example of water of glass. So suppose you're filling a water of glass, and we know that we can fill the water of glass up to a maximum level. But when we start filling it more than its maximum level, it will start spilling the water outside. So same is the case with lakes and rivers. This is what happens, and sometimes even the spillover will cause the floods in the other neighboring and the low-lying areas. So unlike natural disasters, the causes of floods are very well established, and floods are relatively slow in occurrence, and they take place very oftenly. They also occur in well-defined regions and within expected time in a year. So this is one type of a disaster which we already know that it's going to happen in this region and at this particular time of the year. So floods occur commonly when the water in the form of surface runoff, it will exceed the carrying capacity of the river channels, as I said earlier, and streams, and also it will flow into the neighboring low-lying floodplains. So at times this will even go beyond the capacity of the lakes and other inland water bodies in which they flow. So they can be caused due to storm surge, as we read in the previous slide, in the coastal areas, and high intensity rainfall also, which takes place for a very longer period of time, can cause floods. Also the melting of ice and snow through global warming. So what happens is, when global warming increases, the temperature also will increase and it will become very hot. So then ice will start melting. When ice will start melting, there will be more water which will be accumulated in many water bodies, and slowly the water level will start rising. So that is how floods takes place. And also then reduction in the infiltration rate and presence of eroded material in the water due to a higher rate of soil erosion. So though floods occur frequently over wide geographical area, they'll have very disastrous ramifications in many parts of the world in longer run. And floods in South, Southeast and East Asian countries, particularly India, Bangladesh, China, they are very frequent and equally disastrous, which cause a lot of damage. So unlike other natural disasters, human beings, they play a very important role in the genesis as well as spread of floods. So here we get to know that human beings play a very direct role in causing these floods. So it can be through indiscriminate deforestation, unscientific agricultural practices, disturbances along the natural drainage channels, then a lot of high population and colonization of floodplains and riverbeds. So these are some of the human activities that play an important role in increasing the intensity, magnitude and also gravity of flood. So various states of India face heavy loss of lives and property due to the recurrent floods, and the Rashtriya Bhar Ayog, which is the National Flood Commission, it has identified 40 million hectares of land as flood prone area in India. So mainly regions like Assam, West Bengal and Bihar, they are the high flood prone states in India. And apart from these, most of the rivers in the northern states like Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, they are also very prone to occasional floods. So it has been noticed that states like Rajasthan, Gujarat, Haryana, Punjab, they are also getting flooded in recent decades due to flash floods, which mainly occurs due to high rainfall. So this is partly because of the pattern of monsoon and partly because of the blocking of most of the streams and river channels by human activities. So as I said, high rainfall which comes through the monsoon winds, and then sometimes Tamil Nadu experiences flooding during November and January due to the retreating monsoon. So frequent inundation or flooding of agricultural land and human settlement, particularly in Assam, West Bengal, Bihar, eastern Uttar Pradesh, where the flooding rivers are present, and then coastal areas of Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, where they are prone to cyclone because of the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. Then we have states like Punjab, Rajasthan, Northern Gujarat and Haryana, where flash floods takes place, as we read in the earlier slide. So these have serious consequences on the national economy and society. So floods do not only destroy valuable crops every year, but they also damage physical infrastructure such as roads, rails, bridges, and also human settlements. Millions of people, they'll be rendered homeless, and then they also get washed down along with their cattle in the floods and lose their lives. So spread of diseases like cholera, gastroenteritis, hepatitis, and other waterborne diseases will also be spread in the flood affected areas. But they say that flood also makes a few positive contributions, but these contributions are of no use because enough damage of life and property has already taken place. So every year floods will deposit fertile silt over agricultural fields, which is good for the crops. Majuli, which is in Assam, it is the largest riverine island of the world, and it is the best example of good paddy crops after the annual floods in Brahmaputra. But these are insignificant benefits in comparison to the grave losses that the people go through at times of the floods. So the government of India as well as the state governments, they are very well aware of the problems which is created by the floods every year. So construction of flood protection embankments in flood prone areas, then construction of dams, afforestation, and discouraging major construction activities in upper reaches of most of the flood creating rivers, they are some of the steps that need to be taken up in the coming future and on urgent basis. So removal of human settlements from the river channels and depopulating the flood plains, that can also help in many ways. So this is particularly true in western and northern parts of the country which experience flash floods. Also, the cyclone centers, they can provide relief in coastal areas which are hit by storm surges. So then we have droughts. So the term drought, it is applied to an extended period where there will be a shortage of water availability due to the inadequate precipitation or rainfall, excessive rate of evaporation, and overutilization of water from the reservoirs and other storage areas, including the groundwater. So drought is a complex phenomenon because it involves elements of meteorology like rainfall, evaporation, evapotranspiration, then groundwater, soil moisture, storage, and surface runoff. Also, agricultural practices. So, particularly the types of crops which are grown and the socio-economic practices and the ecological conditions which are present in that area. So, drought is not just a disaster which is related with one specific event or cause, but there are so many causes. So types of droughts. So meteorological drought, it is a situation when there is prolonged period of inadequate rainfall marked by the maldistribution of same over time and space. Then we have agricultural drought. So it is also known as soil moisture drought and characterized by low soil moisture. So this will support the crops. But when the drought happens, it will result in crop failures, and moreover, if an area has more than 30% of gross cropped area under irrigation, the area is excluded from the drought prone category. So hydrological drought, so this will result when the availability of water in different storages and reservoirs like aquifers, lakes, reservoirs, it will fall below the amount of the precipitation that can replenish it. So you can see in this picture. And then we have ecological drought. So when the productivity of a natural ecosystem fails due to the shortage of water, and as a consequences of ecological distress, damages will be induced in the ecosystem. So various parts of India will experience these droughts and recurrently, which will result in some serious socio-economic and ecological problems. So you can see the amount of things that are getting affected because of these droughts. So it's ranging from trees to water bodies, then the wildlife which is on land. So the drought prone areas in India. So as we all know that Indian agriculture has been heavily dependent on the monsoon rainfall, and droughts and floods are two main accompanying features of the Indian climate. So according to some estimates, it is said that nearly 19% of the total geographical area of the country and 12% of its total population, they suffer to drought every year. So about 30% of the country's total area is identified as drought prone, affecting around 50 million people. So it is a common experience that while some parts of the country they'll face floods, there are regions which will face severe drought during the same period of time. And also it is very common to witness that one region will suffer floods in one season and it will experience drought in the other season. So this is mainly because of the large scale variations and the unpredictable nature and behavior of the monsoon in India. So thus droughts are widespread and common phenomenon in most parts of the country, but they are more recurrent and severe in some and not so in other regions. So on the basis of the severity of droughts, India can be divided into the following regions. So extreme drought affected areas. So these are parts of Rajasthan, particularly areas to the west of the Aravalli hills, because we know that the Aravallis will block the rain, and this west side will be on the leeward side of Aravallis and other mountain ranges. So the Marusthali and the Kutch regions of Gujarat fall in this category. Then also districts like Jaisalmer and Barmer from Indian desert that receive less than 90 mm average annual rainfall are also included in this category. Then severe drought prone areas like parts of eastern Rajasthan, most parts of Madhya Pradesh, then eastern parts of Maharashtra, interior parts of Andhra Pradesh and the Karnataka plateau, then the northern parts of the interiors of Tamil Nadu and southern parts of Jharkhand. Also interiors of Odisha are also included in this category, that is a severe drought prone area. Then the moderate drought affected area is the northern parts of Rajasthan, Haryana, southern districts of Uttar Pradesh and the remaining parts of Gujarat, Maharashtra except the Konkan region, and also Jharkhand and Coimbatore plateau of Tamil Nadu and the interiors of Karnataka are some of the examples. Then we have the remaining parts of India which can be considered either free, drought free or less prone to droughts. So consequences of droughts, so they have a very cascading effect on various aspects of environment and society. So crop failure will lead to scarcity of food grains, that is called akal, and then fodder, thrinkal, and then inadequate rainfall which will result in the shortage of water, jalkal, and often shortage in all three which will be the thrikal. This is the most devastating situation, and large scale death of cattle and other animals, then migration of humans and livestock, they are the most common sights which can be seen in drought affected areas. And this scarcity of water, it will compel people to consume contaminated water which will result in the spread of many waterborne diseases like gastroenteritis, cholera, hepatitis. And then droughts have both immediate as well as long term disastrous consequences on the social and the physical environments. So consequently what will happen, has to be done is planning for drought has to be taken. The planning of drought, it has to take both aspects into consideration, that is provision for distribution of safe drinking water, medicines for victims, availability of fodder and water for cattle, and shifting of people and their livestock to safer places. So these are some of the steps that need to be taken immediately. And identification of groundwater potential in the forms of aquifers, transfer of river water from the surplus to the deficit areas, and also particularly planning for interlinking of rivers and construction of reservoirs and dams should be given a serious thought. So remote sensing and satellite imageries, they can also be used in identifying the possible river basins that can be interlinked and identified for groundwater potential. So spreading of knowledge about drought resistant crops, then proper training and practice. This can be some of the long term measures that will help in drought mitigation, and rainwater harvesting also can be very effective method in minimizing the effects of drought. Then we have landslides. So these are the rapid sliding of large mass of bedrocks. So disasters due to landslides, they'll be far less dramatic than due to earthquakes, volcano eruptions, tsunamis and cyclones. But the impact which they have on the natural environment and national economy, it will be very much severe. So unlike other disasters, they'll be sudden, unpredictable and largely controlled by macro or regional factors. And also landslides are largely controlled by highly localized factors. So hence, gathering information and monitoring the possibilities of landslide, it is not only difficult, but it is immensely cost intensive also. So on the basis of the past experience, frequency and certain causal relationships with the controlling factors like the geology, the geomorphic agents, the slope, the land use, the vegetation cover present over there and the human activities that take place, India has been divided into a number of zones. So as you can see in the picture how this huge block of this hill has completely slided downwards. Then over here on the road how there's full complete soil and sometimes even big rocks can literally slide down and fall on the roads. And here on the railway track you can see how these rocks have fallen down and the trees and blocked the railway line. So this is the effects and consequences of landslides. So the landslide prone zones are, the four types are very high, then we have high, moderate and the regions where there is very low occurrence of landslides. So these very high zones will be mainly young mountain areas, the Himalayas, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, then high rainfall regions which will have steep slopes in Western Ghats and Nilgiris, then the northeastern regions, and these areas will experience frequent ground shaking due to earthquakes. So everything is interrelated. Earthquakes will lead to landslides, landslides will lead to something else. So areas of intense human activities, particularly those related to construction of roads, dams, these all are included in the very high prone zones. Then in the high zones we have areas which have similar conditions to the first one, and the only difference between the two is that the combination intensity and frequency of the controlling factors. So all the Himalayan states and the states from the northeastern regions except the plains of Assam are included in the high prone zone, high landslide prone zone. Then we have the moderate to low landslide prone zone. So areas that receive less precipitation or rainfall such as the trans-Himalayan areas of Ladakh and Himachal Pradesh, and also undulated yet stable relief and low precipitation areas in the Aravalis and rain shadow areas in the western and eastern Ghats of Deccan Plateau. They experience occasional landslides. So landslides occur even due to mining and subsidence, which are most common in states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Goa, Kerala, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. So you can see in the picture these are very high ones are in red. So you can see in the northeast, then over here in the Himalayan region, and very high are also present here only. So mainly it is here wherever the mountain ranges are there more, and in Western Ghats also we know it is a series of hills. So again hilly type areas. So other areas will be the remaining parts of India, which will include states like Rajasthan, Haryana, UP, Bihar, West Bengal, except the district of Darjeeling. Also Assam, except the district of Karbi Anglong and the coastal regions of the southern states, which are safe as far as landslides are concerned. Then we have the consequences of landslides. So as you can see how much trouble a landslide can cause is, it can cause when there is a sliding of the bedrock also, and then such stones also, when the earth shakes, such big rocks can fall on the road, it can fall on vehicles, and then when landslides occur, even the trees which are on the sides, they can break and fall. So landslides, they have a relatively small and localized area of direct influence, but the road block, the destruction of railway lines, then the river blocking, which happens mainly due to rock falls, they have very far reaching consequences, because this will block the entire communication channel or the road from one place to another. And then diversion of river courses due to landslides can also lead to floods and loss of life and property. So it also makes spatial interaction difficult and risky as well, and it will become more time consuming and expensive matter. So this will in turn adversely affects the developmental activities in these areas. So how can mitigation be done is, it is advisable to adopt area specific measures to deal with landslides, because it will be different in different areas, and restriction on the construction and other developmental activities such as roads and dams, then limiting agriculture to valleys and areas with moderate slopes, not too much steep slopes or high slopes, and also the control on the development of large settlements in high landslide prone zones should be enforced. So this should be supplemented by some positive actions like promoting large-scale afforestation programs and the construction of bunds, which will reduce the flow of water. Then we have disaster management. So disasters due to cyclones, unlike the ones which is caused by earthquakes, tsunamis and volcano eruptions, it can be more predictable in the terms of time and place of their occurrences. Moreover, with the help of development of techniques to monitor the behavior of cyclones, their intensity, direction and magnitude, it has become possible to manage the cyclonic hazard to some extent. So construction of cyclone shelters, embankments, reservoirs, dikes and afforestation to reduce the speed of winds are some of the steps which can help in minimizing the damages. So however, increase in the loss of life and property in countries like India, Bangladesh, Myanmar in successive storms and disasters, it is largely due to their population which is residing in the coastal areas, which are more prone to disasters. So these coastal areas are more prone to storm surges, as we read earlier, and the Disaster Management Bill of 2005, it defines disaster as a catastrophe, mishap, calamity or a grave occurrence affecting any area arising from the natural or man-made causes, or by accident or negligence, which will result in the substantial loss of life or human suffering or damage too, and also destruction of environment, and is of such nature or magnitude as to be beyond the coping capacity of the community of the affected area. So to conclude, disasters can be natural or the results of human activities, and all hazards need not turn into disasters. So since it is difficult to eliminate disasters, particularly the natural disasters, because they are natural in origin, so the next best option is mitigation and preparedness. So there are 3 stages involved in disaster mitigation and management. That is a pre-disaster management, which involves generating data and information about the disasters, then preparing disaster prone zone maps and spreading awareness among the people about these. Then apart from this, disaster planning, preparedness and preventive measures and other steps have to be taken in such areas. Then during disasters, rescue and relief operations such as evacuation, construction of shelters and relief camps, then supplying of water, food, clothing and medical aids, this should all be done on an emergency basis, urgent basis. So post disaster operations, they should involve rehabilitation and recovery of victims, and it should also concentrate on capacity building in order to cope up with the future disasters. So these measures, they have special significance to a country like India, which has about 2/3 of its geographical area and equal proportion of its population which are very prone to disasters. So introduction of the Disaster Management Bill of 2005 and the establishment of the National Institute of Disaster Management are some of the examples of the positive steps which have been taken by the Government of India. So make sure you read about this Disaster Management Bill of 2005. It can help you for your current affairs. So we are done with our India Physical Environment textbook, which is textbook number 1. Now class 11 textbook number 2, with which we will be dealing in the coming days, is Fundamentals of Physical Geography. So this textbook has more complex topics, and it has very detailed information about all the geomorphic processes and then all the basics. So this will make our basics very strong, and it will be very, very helpful from the point of view of prelims and mains. It will also be very helpful for those students whose optional subject is geography. So if in case again you people are interested for our UPSC test series, make sure that you contact on this number on WhatsApp. You can even email us and visit our YouTube channel for more such videos. And I hope that until now all these videos of chapter 11th textbook number 1, that is India Physical Environment, has been helpful to you in some or the other way. Please support us and encourage us so that we make such videos in the coming days. We'll make much more videos on different subjects which will help you in your UPSC preparation. So I'll be back with Fundamentals of Physical Geography. Until then, all the best, and thank you very much for being with us and supporting us. And please make sure that you like, comment and share these videos with as many people as possible. So see you next time. Thank you.